You're about to watch just one of 10 learning modules from my full Dark Melodic Trap course. And I'm not gatekeeping, so you can access the course in its entirety in my free music creators community. In the free community, you'll be able to access the templates, the sounds, the presets, and the effects so that you could follow along and have a good foundation to start off with. And if you like what you learned from the course, then link up with me live in my live Music Creators Academy. In the Academy, we'll have live Q&A sessions for direct feedback and review with beat critiques. You'll also get access to music and business workshops for you to start growing and developing and scaling your own online presence. To join, just click the link in the description. You'll notice that there are notes within the scale in between this chord. Now, when people teach you triads, just like I just taught you, we teach you to skip every other note within the scale. However, a lot of trap chords will create the melody within the chord progression rather than going outside and trying to create melodies outside with other instruments and other sounds. A lot of times you want a melody within your chords and not just a sustaining pad the whole time. This is what can give your beats a lot more movement, a lot more melodic value. That's why I'm calling this a dark melodic trap beat course and not just dark trap or trap. This is very specific where if you want to level up your melodic game and make your beats sound a little more interesting without adding in a bunch of overcomplicated sounds, this is how you do it. Within your chord progression, you can create rhythms and melodies with the notes that are in between the notes in the chord. So, for example, right now, I'm just going to play this chord, but I'm going to switch this middle note and play the next note up or the next note down within the scale. And I'm going to create a rhythm with it. Let's start off just by holding down the notes so that you could just hear the chords themselves before we even get into breaking these up and creating movement with it. So that's your main minor chord, E minor. What chord is that? Because this isn't a typical triad, because now we aren't skipping every other note in the scale. We're actually playing two notes right next to each other in the scale, A and B. Now listen to how this sounds when we go back down to our normal chord. I'm going to play our new chord first, and then I'm going to go back down. Dark, right? And I believe that's a chord you normally would not play. Most of you are playing triads and then going to the next triad and then trying to find another triad, or you're trying to add in fifths and sevenths, and that has nothing to do with dark trap. Now you know that you could use these passing notes and get even more chords that actually work within your chord progression. Let's do the opposite. Instead of going up, I'm going to take the middle note and go down. E minor, here's the new chord by moving the middle note down. Dark, right? That is dark. That is ominous. You're not going to get that by switching up the chord and going to a whole new chord and trying to explore adding in additional notes to your chords. Stop all that. Saving you a whole lot of time by not doing that. Just explore the chord as is and just explore the notes in between the chords that you're already using that are dark, and then create inversions of those. If moving the middle note down one to that sounds good and dark, guess what? That's an inversion that you could create as well. So instead of playing E, F sharp, and A sharp, and B, what's the inversion of that? The inversion of that would be moving this B down an octave, playing this B instead. What does that sound like? Here's the top one, and then we're going to move to the bottom one. Now, if you're hearing what I'm hearing, that sounds lame, right? It's dark, but it's lame. Like it's not, it needs to go somewhere. Going back and forth between those two, it sounds like it needs to go up, or it needs to come down, or something needs to change here. Uh-oh, what was that? What did we just do there? All we did was just go back to our main chord. That's all we did. We just went back to our main chord. And that's what I mean by really keeping this simple. Stop trying to find all these new chords when all you needed to do was just create inversions off of the chords that I already gave you. That was just me going back and forth between the two. Is that not the whole foundation of a beat right there? And I think I skipped a step there. So I'm already adding rhythm to that. I'm not just gonna play. Add some rhythm to that so that you get inspired with what other melodies and sounds you're going to add. Think about your rhythms and be a little creative with it, because you don't have to be so syncopated with it. I'm going to play different rhythms to let you know, man, yeah, you could literally have a whole album of the same exact chord progression and it could have a different feel every time. Watch. Verses. 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 There's so many different combinations that you could come up with in terms of rhythms. And that was the same progression over and over and over again. And it sounded like 4 different songs every single time. You could just stick with 2 chords and then play inversions of that. I'm just playing 2 chords here. Sounds like 4, but it's just 2 chords. If you really think about it with the way that I just taught you, it's really just 1 chord that I'm playing. Really, I'm just playing the 3 different variations of E minor with the 2 extra inversions and the main triad. Instead of just normal E minor, I'm moving that middle note down to F sharp, and then I'm inverting that to play that. Now, in my head, I'm not thinking about all that. In my head, I'm just playing chords that are allowed. And I did the math out loud to explain to you, oh, you know what? That was actually all the same chord. I didn't even realize it until I broke it down for you and then showed you that, yeah, actually that's just the same minor chord, except middle notes move down, and then that's inverted. But I'm not thinking about doing that. Let me play the minor chord, invert that, and then move the middle note down, invert that. Like, I'm not thinking about that. I just know that there are chords available, and no matter what I play, it is going to be dark. No matter what. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I just picked those were random. That was random. 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 It won't matter. If you follow those rules, if you follow that pattern, it will always be dark. Another trick that will increase the melodic nature of the chords that you're playing, eliminating one of the notes, is actually really powerful. So I'm starting with an inversion right off bat. So that tells you that you don't even have to start with a typical triad. You could change the melodic nature of your chord progressions by repeating the same chord again, but eliminating one of those notes. It gives you the option to do things like this. That's totally different than like there's no bounce, there's no feel, there's no groove. All you had to do is just eliminate one note. Now you have a melodic nature within your chord. And sometimes we'll eliminate 2 notes. You can still stay on the same chord and switch things around, eliminate notes just to make that final chord a little more interesting, even though you're literally playing the same exact chord. For example, see how it finished that progression for us versus that sounded like it needed to keep going because we kept this note. But by eliminating that note, not playing this note right here, we get a completion to the chords. Typically, it will sound like it's finished when you're using the bottom 2 notes. And it'll sound like it'll need to continue when you're using the top 2 notes.